Hello, this is your host Akhil Navluri, and welcome to the very fifth episode of the One-to-One podcast series. So, in this podcast episode, like in the previous episode, as you have just heard, we have covered about the naval space, and also we're taking the insights from a nuclear submarine commander. But this time, we're going to go into a very different space, talking about sports marketing and sports advisory. So, joining me today is one of the most prominent people of the sports advisory and the sports marketing space, Mr. Matthew Barrett, who happens to be the founder and CEO of the company GoalClick. And Matthew, he's based out of London, United Kingdom. So Matthew, it gives me a supreme pleasure to welcome you to this podcast episode of mine. So Matthew, how are you doing? And how are things in London at the moment?
Everything is great. Thank you for the introduction. I'm slightly amazed at what I'm following, and nuclear submarines was not what I was anticipating the last guest to have been. So that's blown my mind slightly, but everything is very well in London. And yeah, the year has started very well for me and for GoalClick.
That's very nice. So, I know the year has started really well. And through this podcast episode also, we're going to have a beautiful, conversation about GoalClick and things that I would like to, talk about more. And so without any further ado, and, with more optimism, let's kick off with our podcast session. All right. So, Matthew, firstly, can you give me, a timeline of your journey in the sports marketing and sports advisory space?
Absolutely. So I have worked in sport for around about the last 17 years. Sounds a lot when you say it out loud. I have probably divided my career into two parts. The first part, for around 8 or 9 years, I was working for sports marketing agencies in London. I worked for 3 different agencies: Hill and Knowlton, ESP, and Two Circles. And then in the background to that, GoalClick was brewing. GoalClick is my own organization. And in 2018, after 4 years of growing it as a side hustle, a passion project, I decided to go full time on GoalClick. And it was slow and steady first few years. There was the pandemic, but from 2021 onwards, things really leapt forward. And the last 5 years of GoalClick has been a period of real sustained growth, both in terms of work and the team. We're now a team of 7. And yeah, that's my journey. So kind of two halves. And here I am today.
That's pretty amazing, Matthew. That's a beautiful timeline. Now, Matthew, firstly, anyone, who's hearing to the podcast episode, the first thing, or let's say the thing that they would like to, take inspiration from you, like what exactly, made you to, pursue into sports marketing and, sports advisory space? Was this, your sheer love for football and, for sports altogether, or like, what was it about?
It's a little more complex than that, I would say, than just a pure love for sport. Undoubtedly, that existed in my life from a young age. But I think actually the reason for going into the sports industry and doing what I do now is actually my development while at university. I was studying history, modern history specifically, whilst also doing a lot of sport, outside of the classroom, so to speak. But a tutor of mine was the first person to really ask me questions and make me aware that there was a way that sports could be academic as well, and ultimately leading to a career. So I ended up studying sport, geopolitics, and conflict, and getting really interested in sport and society, sport and politics, sport and culture. And so actually, what I'm doing today is complete progression from that moment, realizing that, there was more to sport than just, the elite level sporting results or grassroots football. There was a whole industry around it and many different facets of that. So I wanted to work in sports production and sports storytelling. I found that a very hard world to get into. And so I then found myself applying for roles in sports marketing. But yeah, the origin of it is, realizing that it was okay to read books about sport as part of a degree, which is
Yeah.
quite an amazing thing to
Mm.
realize when you're
Yep.
20 years old, that this
That's right.
counts.
Mm.
And yeah, really, honestly, everything today can be traced back to that moment. So I'm very grateful for that person who opened my mind.
All right. So basically, it is that moment, and and now you're here, and there's no looking back, and you have achieved really big things, and that's really good to hear, Matthew. About all the things you just mentioned about. With respect to the sports advisory and things. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're giving a very modest look to that. Like, why am I, taking you to the skies and all? But I really mean it. When I was just, going through your profile and knowing about Goal Click. Now, for the listeners, I just wanted to understand. Would you like to, give me, an insight into your tenure? Being the founder and CEO of your initiative Goal Click, and is there any interesting backstory, that is associated with the behind the inception of its creation?
I often say that I was an idea in search of an execution. I think it really sums up how we got to this point. As I mentioned, the kind of stories that I was interested in were, where sport and politics collided, where there was conflict. I would be interested in what was happening in the sporting world.
Okay. All right.
When the Arab Spring happened in 2011, my first reaction was, what's happening in football in these countries? And I think that really is a reflection of how I approached the world. It's true.
Okay.
Like that's my thought process. How can we get a better insight into what's going on in people's lives and in the country? Let's use sport and particularly football as a lens for that. So I think for a good few years, I was looking for that execution to really plow my energies into. And it actually came about unexpectedly. A friend of mine, who is the co-founder of Goal Click, we were speaking one day, throwing some ideas around. He was getting very into his disposable analog photography. Would probably call that a bit of a hipster thing to be interested in at the time in London. But for me, I immediately saw that this was a very simple way to start being able to tell these kind of stories, and ultimately all we needed to do, it sounds like a small thing, it was a relatively small thing, was send a camera to someone, and that person was in Sierra Leone. He was a church minister called Pastor Abraham Bangura, and he was also the coach of the amputee football team. And that simple moment, sending a disposable camera and asking him to capture his life, his team, his community, and write about it from his own perspective, that is the moment at which that slightly crazy, funny idea became something really profound and deep.
Right.
And that moment has led to where we are today, which is Goal Click, which in short finds people and supports them to tell their own stories from their own perspective of their sporting lives and their sporting communities. And that really was present in that very first origin moment, and in that origin discussion of what we're going to do. And yeah, it all snowballed from there.
That's fantastic. That's a beautiful, origin story about it. Now, from Sierra Leone, what was your next destination? Like, was it to South America, or like, where did you head next after that?
India. It was actually India.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's surprising. Yep.
I think it's worth stating, because I want to also be really clear on how we say things. We never headed anywhere. So the beauty of Goal Click and the method that we use is that we don't travel. We don't send in production crews. We don't send in photographers or journalists or filmmakers.
Okay.
We find people with interesting stories, whether they are fans or coaches or grassroots communities or athletes. And once we find them and guide them, they then capture everything, whether that's through photography, the written word, video, spoken storytelling. They are the ones capturing everything. And then we obviously curate it and create these powerful, deeper stories. But everything is kind of captured by those people. And so when we say we went to India, we didn't go to India. We found a wonderful storyteller who was a 14-year-old girl called Blessy, who lived in Dharavi in Mumbai. and she was an aspiring footballer with an organisation. And she told her story, and that was the second ever Goal Click story. And you can sense, obviously, our start point was in sport for good organisations, sport for social change, very grassroots.
Yep.
But then very quickly we started moving into other realms, fan culture and traditional grassroots football in Russia, in Peru, in Australia, telling powerful stories from Rwanda, from Liberia, from Iraq, which at the time was, a lot of it was controlled by Islamic State. So, and athlete stories quickly came as well. So we went quite wide quite quickly, even though we started in, very, very, grassroots communities. We went quite wide in terms of countries and quite wide in terms of topics quite quickly.
That's brilliant. That's really good to know. So basically, it's like people, telling their own stories, which is really a beautiful initiative. Now, since I'm based in Australia, so from my, perspective, I just want to understand, like, what was with Australia? Like, which story did you capture, of this beautiful country?
We've told a lot of stories about Australia, but the very first one we told was from Sydney FC. And it was a fan group called The Cove, which is quite famous in Sydney and Australia. And that was one of our first fan storytelling kind of, fan stories, I guess. And it really got captured deep within the group and the intimacy of the photos. Our storyteller, Chris, got really close to the people who was capturing. And I think, a real commonality in the early days of Goal Click was quite how intimate the photos in particular were.
Yeah.
So much so that it was clear that no of them outside of those communities could really have been capturing what they were showing. And I think that has stayed with us for a long time, that, we know the best way to understand someone's lived experience is to hear it directly from them or see it directly from them.
Exactly.
And, that founding principle has stayed with us throughout. And that was present in our early stories in Australia. Since then, we've told some stories from Melbourne quite a lot, particularly around refugee communities. We've worked with the Afghanistan women's national team, who are obviously based in Australia now. So yeah, Australia's definitely been a place where we're very active.
That's pretty nice. That's really good to know. Now, if you want to, give a complete deep overview of, what your company, Goal Click is to the listeners, or let's say, someone, who asks you a question, Matthew, what is your company exactly like? Can you just give me a deep overview of that? So how would you like to give it?
In the sense, in what specific sense?
Like, you just gave me, a complete understanding about, what your company is. But if you want to, expand, what your company is in that way, how would you like to,
Yeah, I mean, look, we describe ourselves as a storytelling organization with that very, very deep focus on that methodology of first-person storytelling. That will always be the fundamental. As I said, we started our life in football, but over the last 3 or 4 years, we've expanded massively into other sports. So football's probably about 60% of our work at the moment, but we've started working in rugby, in golf, in sailing, in various other sports. So that's a big evolution for Goal Click. We're also evolving in terms of our formats. So as I said, we started in photography and written word. Video has now probably become our primary format. But we also do these really amazing live spoken storytelling events where we train people for a month to be able to give a personal story to a live audience, which are very, very, very special events. And we've also been quite well known for doing physical exhibitions. We've done about 15 exhibitions all around the world in our 12 years of existence. So that's the kind of ethos of Goal Click. We are a business. Whilst we devote a proportion of our time, resources, and revenues to good causes, and do a lot of pro bono work, about about 75% of our work is commissioned collaborations where brands and clubs and federations and sports organizations of all shapes and sizes will commission us to tell the stories that they want to tell in a deeper, more authentic, more real, more raw way. So we often are finding the storytellers for those organizations, or we're kind of working with people that they nominate. And then all those people who we call our storytellers go on that journey with us. We really hold their hands metaphorically.
Okay. Yeah.
From remote locations to make sure that they're confident and they understand why we want them to tell their story, and ideally what we want them to show. But we don't, micromanage them or tell them exactly what to do. They're free to capture their story as they see it.
Yeah.
And so, whether that's an international or domestic fan base, a social program, grassroots, the stories of athletes. We're working with lots of big organizations. I'll name drop a few now. We're currently working with the likes of the FA and US Soccer and Guinness, Manchester City in the football world.
Right.
We're working with SailGP in sailing, and we've worked on a few golf projects with England Golf and the International Series and Vodafone in women's rugby. Historically, we've worked a lot with the Bundesliga, with CONCACAF, with the Premier League. We've punched above our weight, I would say, for
Hugely.
a 7-person organization. But I think that's because, number one, that method is very different. And has many advantages. It is ultimately both more scalable and more cost effective at once. There's also an ethical element. I think gone are the days where, your default should be to send in a crew to a country and a community where you're not from. And then I think the second point is the people that are telling their stories as part of GoalClick are not professional content creators. Well, maybe 1 or 2% are, but the GoalClick storyteller is generally a athlete or a fan or a grassroots coach or a youth participant who is not professionally trained. And that means those stories are a bit rough and ready, but they're more raw, they're more real, and they're more authentic. And when you combine all those things together, the methodology, the type of person, you get a very unique aesthetic of how these stories come across. And they don't look or sound like any other. And I think that's why we do punch above our weight, because we know that we're not the answer to every challenge or every brief from a partner. But we believe that the world is going in the direction that we're offering a service and we're offering something that feels different, and people are craving to hear real people tell their stories and not do it in a overly produced way. So that's why I think we're doing okay. That's a long answer to what is GoalClick, but hopefully that all makes sense.
Absolutely. That completely, sums up the point for me, about, what GoalClick is. Now, when we talk about, finding these people, people who are telling their stories, how do you, find them in the first place? Like, what's your method? Is it through, mails? Is it through Instagram? Like, where do you exactly happen to meet them?
Let me be honest with you. This all snowballed, and we've accidentally created a living, breathing network. When we started GoalClick, our aim wasn't, let's build a network around the world. I'm sure a lot of organizations start with that and they think it's just going to magically happen overnight. It has taken, 12 years of quite organically getting to know people in communities all over the world. And that started with, having people become part of the GoalClick project. But over time, we've just got to know, leaders of fan groups and activists and founders of NGOs and journalists and community organizers and grassroots footballers, in over 150 countries. And so we don't street cast. We don't really social media cast. We have a very, very strong peer-to-peer network, is how I would call it, which is actually just
Fantastic. Yeah.
becoming close with people and being trusted and being credible and delivering good stories that people go, oh, you do things in the right way. We'd like to be part of that. So we do find that when we put a call out to our friends and fixers and collaborators and everyone who's connected to Gold Click, we find that there's a lot of positivity towards putting other people forward. And so I would call it almost going down the rabbit hole, but it's a peer-to-peer way of doing things. It's, you know that person, go and speak to them. They will then open another door for you. So, yeah, that's how we cast our storytellers. But I would say that it feels a lot more human than that. The logical endpoint of this, unexpectedly, is that sometimes we get asked by organizations just to find people and not actually to then tell their story ourselves, which is a very unexpected development in the world of Gold Click, but it's another part to our business. Obviously, we prefer projects where we find people, we guide them, and then we tell the story in the Gold Click style. But we're absolutely happy to use our network to put people forward for other exciting projects that don't necessarily need the Gold Click way of telling the story.
Absolutely. I just, find this as a very organic approach, and, that's really a good way to, start with. And, you're doing really good in this. Now, you just mentioned, a plethora of, football leagues. So I'm very much keen to understand, would you like to, share your experience of, partnering with partners like, CONCACAF, the FA, EA Sports, FIFA, UEFA, Premier League, and also hosting major exhibitions and also live storytelling events in the cities of Europe, North America, and South America? Like how are you able to balance with all these partners together?
Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds like we're needing some more employees. But look, we work in a project manner, so at any one time we're probably working with 4 or 5 organizations, and the projects tend to run over the course of 3, 6, 9 months. So not everything is like hot and live at the same time. We find that those organizations, usually having got to know us, come to us with a quite specific brief. I think CONCACAF's a really great example. It stands out still as a partner who really utilized everything that Gold Click can do. So they came to us in 2023 ahead of the Gold Cup, and they wanted to create a storytelling series which really showed off the diversity of CONCACAF fandom. And that what that actually means is the 16 teams in the Gold Cup, how can we show national identity, fan culture, heritage through the eyes of one fan from each of those countries? And so we put forward a lot of potential options to be those fan storytellers for each country. And in the end, those 16 were chosen. And then we worked with those 16 fans to, really bring out what their story was, what their identity was, what their heritage was, what their culture was. And, these were poets, these were filmmakers, these were environmental activists, it was coffee farmers, it was coaches, musicians, barbers. It was, people who had a layer beneath just fandom. Like how they express their fandom and how does, who are they as people and how does their national identity come through what they do in their lives? And then all of that content was then published by CONCACAF during the Gold Cup. And it really was a brilliant series. So that's a really good example of, a clear direction, a clear campaign, and how Gold Click storytelling can show up through a campaign like that. So that's like a really good example from a fan perspective. I think from a community perspective, Bundesliga is a really good example. We've just completed a project with the Bundesliga around their Common Ground initiative, which is where they refurbish pitches around the world. And we told the story of those initiatives in Brazil, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Germany through the perspective of the young youth, the youth who were using those facilities. And, you know, as I said before, it really hits different when it's the people who are being impacted by an initiative telling the story. You know, we're not talking about these people. You know, they are the ones telling it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, again, a really good example of a very clear initiative and a clear reason for GoalClick being the organization to tell those stories, or rather, be the organization through which people can tell their stories. So, yeah, and then, you know, we have a very varied range of initiatives. You know, Manchester City, we largely work at telling the story of their US fan base. With the FA, we do a range of storytelling. We've worked with volunteers, with fans, with disability, para athletes. We're currently working on a project around community ahead of the World Cup. So, yeah, very, very varied. But all of these organisations, whether they're a brand or a sports organisation, you know, they ultimately want to tell a story more deeply about their fans or their communities or their athletes. And they see us as a great vehicle to, you know, find them and do those stories justice in a different way.
That's a brilliant thing. Now, you told me that, you know, in our conversations that, you know, you did a very small project with UEFA. So I wanted to understand, you know, being a UEFA, you know, fanboy myself. So what was that, you know, that project, you know, that you were linked with UEFA?
I mean, UEFA was our second ever partner. It's a very, very distant project now, but it was in 2019 when, as all your listeners can put maths together, was the very early days of me doing GoalClick full time. UEFA were our second ever partner after Adidas. And we did a small project with them around the Women's Champions League. But it was the players, it was the elite players taking us inside their world, into their changing rooms, and showing what the Women's Champions League meant to them and how they lived their football life across that tournament. So,
okay.
You know, we were very fortunate to work with some leading players at the time who have gone on to enormous things. You know, Lucy Bronze was part of that project. Ali Riley was part of that project. So, yeah, it was a real leap of faith from UEFA to work with us at that time. But it was a very, you know, powerful set of photos and written stories from players. You know, in 2019, women's football was not what it was now. Sorry, not what it is now. It was there was very little storytelling going on around the women's game, and very little interest in the stories of women's footballers. Like, I can absolutely categorically say that. The difference 4 years later, in 2023, around that World Cup, was vast. So yeah, at the time, it was a really different and very special project. And we'll always, you know, we remember the people who partnered with us in the early days because it definitely took a bit more of a leap of faith in doing something very different and very new.
That's amazing, Matthew. So, you know, that explains the point to me. Now, Matthew, you know, out of all the partners, out of all the stories, you know, pertaining to the sporting lives of different people and communities, you know, which one stands out the most to you, and what has inspired you the most, you know, from all these stories?
Wow, that's a massive question when we've worked with about over 700 storytellers.
700. Wow.
Yeah. I need to do a recount on exactly how many we have done.
All right.
It feels like it's about that. Look, I mentioned the Sierra Leone story. As our first story, it always stands out as being a really important story for us. It really set us on our way. I mentioned a few other stories in the early days of GoalClick, you know, working with Eric Marangwa, a genocide survivor in Rwanda. Was a really powerful story in the early days of GoalClick. But I think the series that really stands out for me is we worked with around 100 refugees, asylum seekers, and displaced persons around the world in collaboration with the UNHCR. You know, to tell stories that often don't get heard. You know, what is the football life like of someone living in a refugee camp in Kenya or in Jordan? What is the life of a refugee girl integrating into a new host community in Australia or in Austria? And those stories were really, really powerful, particularly from the women and the girls. I think there are so many layers preventing women and girls in all countries, but particularly when there are cultural factors at play, preventing women and girls getting out on the pitch. So I always find that often those stories hit a bit deeper. I think our Women's World Cup work has always been amazing, like telling the stories of elite athletes in the run up to a major tournament, but in a way that you often don't see them. So that really stands out to me. And yeah, I think those are the stories that instinctively come to mind. The Afghanistan women's national team work that we have done obviously is very powerful and very relevant to where you are in Australia. And you know what? We've worked in Iranian women's football, and that is very tiny right now. And if you go onto our site, you will see the work that Mariam Majid did in Iran, and half of her story is covering the Iranian women's national team. So yeah, it whilst I mentioned a few of our the men who have worked as part of the Gold Click Storyteller being very powerful, I think generally a lot of our stories led by women and girls kind of often resonate really in a big way with our audience.
That is absolutely true, Matthew. So Matthew, you just gave me, countless examples of, different regions. Now, if I have to, circle back to, the place that you're based in England. So what is the story that, you covered from your home country?
It's really interesting because in the early days of Gold Click, we deliberately avoided the UK and the US because we wanted to make Gold Click feel global. And we felt that if we went too deeply into, the UK or the US in the early days, it would make it seem like those were the places we were focusing on telling stories from. So, but in recent years, we have definitely done a lot more in the UK and the US. We did a series with the FA last year around grassroots football and behaviour on pitches in the UK, and some of those stories have really stayed with me. We worked with an organisation called Saving Souls, which is tackling mental health through football. We worked with Changing Lives FC, which is the only refugee football team playing in the official pyramid of the English game. So, I think those stories stand out because, they're not typical. They're not the typical story you would expect. I think that's a real hallmark of a lot of Gold Click stories. They're not quite typical. There is an element of undercovered angles that really make a Gold Click story stand out. Yeah. So yeah, they come to mind immediately from the UK.
That's amazing. So, they're pretty good, from all the stories, that you have narrated me, this one is pretty basic. And, and the other things that you've talked about, all the other stories, they really have, they reach the skies. But yeah, every story is a beautiful story told.
Totally. And it doesn't have, not every story has to be a story of overcoming extreme barriers or extreme challenges. I remember when we did our Russia series in 2018 ahead of the World Cup there.
Russia, okay.
Actually, what was so amazing was often the mundanity of the story and the normalcy or the, just the regular life of the stories, which was in its way quite compelling. It doesn't have to be, a deeply profound story to be deeply profound. Actually, everyone has a story that deserves to be told, and it's just about helping bring it out in the right way. A lot of people don't think they have a story. A lot of people think they just like, what would be interesting in my story? But everyone has something. So it's about
Precisely.
shaping
Yeah.
it in the right way. We're not ever just looking for,
Hmm.
a shock and awe story. And actually, we want the reaction of people when they read a gold click story to not be or we don't want it to be oh my god. Like we want it to be, I'd never seen that before. I'd never thought
Yeah.
about it like that. Like I think that's the reaction we want from people. Like, wow, tell me more. I'd never thought about this before. I've never heard it expressed in this way. I've never
Yeah.
seen it in this way. That's the reaction. We're about, I think we're about curiosity and deeper understanding. And that's a slightly softer style of storytelling than be amazed or please have sympathy. And so I think that's a really important tone to like strike with how we tell our stories.
Absolutely. Matthew, I mean, you're just telling that, people should have that wow factor. But when I am, hearing the conversation from your end, I am just getting that complete wow factor, literally the stories that you're narrating me. I'm like, wow.
I
And
mean, they
trust
are
me,
good. They are amazing. They're
they
amazing
are
stories,
all
but
amazing.
but it's
Yeah.
but it's and we love those stories. But I'm saying it's not like it doesn't have to be always that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, sometimes the mundanity and the, let's say, regular story also is really good. For me, if I read about Russia, I'll be like, okay, the culture is like that, the city is like this. Okay, things are like I love reading that because and they're very relatable again in some ways because they're
Exactly.
really yeah.
Exactly. And I often say that people maybe even we thought this at first. We thought this was a football project, or we thought this was a photography project.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. Like sport, football is just like it's almost like the stealth way of getting people to be interested in other
Yes.
humans, other societies, and other communities. Like that is what our purpose is. You know, building deeper understanding of other cultures and other people. We just do it through sports storytelling. Like,
Hmm.
but the actual reason for doing this is a curiosity in the world and people, not a curiosity about football or about sport.
That is true. That is true. That's the right point, Matthew. Now, Matthew, like in your tenure, what are the key differences, that you have found out, with the likes of, the sports sponsorship, sales, and partnership activation, and out of the two, which one did you enjoy the most?
Wow, I love this question. I'm going to separate this into goal click and into the industry at large. I did both. I've done both. In the industry at large, sponsorship sales is, I think, the hardest job in sport. I have nothing but respect for people who do it. The binary nature of it, all success or all failure, really.
Okay.
That's a generalization, but it can feel
Yep.
that way.
Hmm.
Is an amazing thing to experience, but I wouldn't say I necessarily enjoyed it. I much preferred the activation of the existing partnerships, which is way more fun. I mean, one of my formative experiences in the sports industry was traveling to India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka for the Cricket World Cup in 2011 to
Okay.
activate a MoneyGram sponsorship campaign, which mainly
Okay.
involved, getting placards into the crowd and managing a game of throwing a ball in a basket at the mid-innings break.
Right.
That's not life or death. That's just quite fun. So yeah, like it wasn't always like that, but I definitely, enjoyed the activation more than the sales. But I'm really pleased I experienced the sales for kind of 3 years, and I encourage everyone to do it because you understand the sports industry so much quicker when you're dealing with commercial more than kind of activation and comms and marketing. I would say. From a goal click perspective, it's actually kind of flipped. There's something about it being your own organization that make the partnership sales and the doing of the green light for a project quite intoxicating. Like getting a signed off project is exhilarating. And I've now built a team, a wonderful team, who then take those projects and enact them and activate them and do all the amazing work. Obviously that used to just be me, but I have, now as a leader of the organization, I'm focusing increasingly on the bigger picture and the kind of business development, and then I have an amazing team, producing and managing those projects and those storytellers. So yeah, it kind of flipped. When it's your own baby, I think it feels a bit different. But yeah, that's my perspective on things.
That's amazing, Matthew. So Matthew, when you went for the this 2011 World Cup, in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and India, which one was, let's say, like an experience that you would like to go back again? What is that particular city in these three countries?
Nothing really compared to Dhaka in Bangladesh.
Okay.
I have to say. I went to the opening match. I actually went to the opening ceremony, which Bryan Adams performed at, which was very weird.
Okay.
But then the opening match was Bangladesh versus India in Dhaka. And when Tamim Iqbal took about 24 off Sri Sant's first over, I genuinely thought the stadium was going to fall down because the noise and the shaking and the fervor of the fans was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And the whole 3 or 4 days around that match was like one giant festival of positivity. So yeah, I will always remember my 4 days in Dhaka and that game, and particularly that over. Obviously, India went on to win, but for that moment, the Bangladeshi fans really believed.
Yeah, and complimenting the answer, you just gave. We won the game and we even won the World Cup. That was a tribute to our master blaster legend, Sachin Tendulkar. So that will always be a big World Cup for us. Always, the World Cup we have won now, the T20 World Cup, but that's nothing comparable to the one that we've seen in 2011.
Yeah, totally. It was a great tournament, and yeah, I had pretty much universally great experiences around the India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and yeah, I will always remember. It's a very easy answer when people say, "What's the best experience you've ever had in a sporting arena?" It's that. I mean, being in Moscow for Russia beating Spain in 2018 was also totally crazy. Like, I've never seen a wild reaction than seeing Moscow that night. So that from a football perspective, that's probably the kind of craziest atmosphere I've ever witnessed. Yeah.
Circling back to that match, that is a heartbreaker for me because I'm a huge Spain football team fan, and when I saw, my team getting beaten by Russia, I was like, no, this is not the World Cup. So that's like,
well, brace yourself for more with the World Cup being 48 teams with a 32 team knockout this summer. Yeah. There's going to be a lot more banana skins and slip ups than ever before.
100%. 100% that is going to be the case, and every game is going to have its own story. Like you just told me, storytelling, but this is going to come with their own flavor, when we see the games. Yeah.
Completely. And there's so many different interesting threads, with Curacao and Cabo Verde being there, with Haiti being back for the first time in a while. Like there's a real, Jordan qualifying, Uzbekistan qualifying. There are some amazing narratives, as well as all the usual nations where there'll be lots of narratives as well. So it's a 48 team World Cup is actually something I'm quite in favour of generally, because I think the more nations there are, the more stories there are, and within reason, I think 48 is about right, given we live in a world where 220 teams can qualify.
Yeah,
but I'm intrigued to see how 48 team World Cup goes.
That is going to be really interesting for sure.
Or 47,
Matthew.
or 47.
47. It's
Given
all
we're
right.
recording this in mid-March.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. It just happens.
Yeah.
But you're quite right, with the numbers. So there's nothing problem with that. Precisely, it's good. So now, Matthew, would you like to, shed some spotlight, into you being the board member of Football for Future, and how did you, first get involved into this initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Football for Future is an organisation, a non-profit that I've been an advisor slash trustee for the last 5 years, I think now. They started at a time when the relationship between football and climate change and football and sustainability wasn't actually really being spoken about very much. And I think they really led the way in what we now see as a thriving sector. They are, I guess, doing three things. They're furthering education about climate in English football in particular. They're doing a lot of work right now around the 2026 World Cup and focusing on kind of climate adaptation and risk awareness of what is going to be a very extreme weather affected World Cup, I would imagine. And they've just released an amazing report called Pitches in Peril, which I'd encourage all your listeners to Google, which is basically mapping climate risk to stadiums and grassroots pitches all around the world. So I would encourage people to take a look at that, because it's a really incredible piece of work. But my role in it is to help them get on with what they do best, which is, do all the work that I just mentioned. I've been kind of largely helping them, navigate challenges as a small organization. I started my own small organization, and, so many challenges crop up with that, and funding and, running a small organization and paying people, and working out, how to position yourself to the market and how to, do business development. Because even if you're a non-profit, you're in the business of, raising money. And just helping the founders navigate life as a founder. That's mainly what I've been doing. I don't do any of the day-to-day work, obviously, but they're a very inspiring organization and they're doing great things, particularly this year. So I would encourage people to check them out.
Absolutely, that's right. So when you talk about the climatic conditions, so in the Scandinavian countries, as far as I understand, Nordics, they have a particular time, the football season has to be there. So, is Football for Future even, targeting towards the Nordic countries, with respect to, the stadiums there and everything?
I think the focus is largely at the moment in North America. North America, with that World Cup coming, obviously the UK, given where they grew from, and they've been doing projects globally for sure. I'm probably not the best person to talk very specifically about where they're doing their work, and whether the Nordics and Scandinavia is a priority region for them.
I get it. Whatever is, is the requirement, or let's say need of the hour, that has to be, addressed. So I totally get that, Matthew. Now, Matthew, in your journey, are there any interesting success stories and anecdotes, that you have come across at your company GoalClick and throughout your, sports marketing and sports advisory that you would like to share with the listeners in this podcast segment?
I mean, I'll take your question and move in a slightly different direction, if that's okay.
Yep.
I'm a slightly accidental entrepreneur.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily ever think I would be one. I didn't sit down one day and write a business plan and say, I'm going to found my own company and do this and do that. There are lots of people who do that. Fantastic. But I don't think that just because, you don't have a MBA, or you haven't, maybe you don't think you have the exact qualifications and skills to start your own organization, I don't think that should be a restrictor. I'm a good example of someone who literally just spent 5 minutes on an idea they had, and things just grew from there. So I guess, my anecdote is that we started with sending one disposable camera to one person.
Okay.
And then here we are. And I didn't have it all laid out. I kind of adapted as I went along. But if you have an idea, just do 5 minutes and then just do 10 minutes and see where it goes. Exactly. It might go nowhere, and that's okay. I think most founders fail multiple times, and the average age of a successful founder is 55. So, I think there's lots of narrative in the world that prevents people from trying things and starting things. I'm also a believer in, if you have the ability to start experimenting whilst keeping your day job, I think that was a very helpful way of me incubating GoldClick as an idea, rather than immediately leaving my career and embarking on it. I kind of did that when I felt I'd had a proven case study and a business model in mind. So that's a long way round of saying, I guess my anecdote is, I started very small without a plan, and that's okay. And I think genuinely, if you have a good idea, you should try it.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. You need to put it on pen and paper. Yeah.
But also, what is a bit unique about it? I think that's the thing that made GoldClick elevate. We found what that one specific unique element was, and we really dialed down into it. Don't just copy another idea. Can you work out what is different about what you have in mind?
That is true. That is true. So I see a lot of, originality and authenticity, when I, talk about your storytelling and, your ideologies and everything. Now, talking about this now, Matthew, what are your future plans, with respect to GoldClick? What are the next projects that, we'll see GoldClick with? Is it going to be, in ice hockey also? Is it going to be about, Aussie rules football?
I'd love some ice hockey. If there's any ice hockey organizations out there, please get in touch. I think continuing to grow into different sports, continuing to push the boundaries on formats. We've never really touched medium form or long form video. We've never really touched audio. We're only just starting our events work. That excites me a lot. But the number one thing is exist. So many organizations, they reach the end of their road and they have to stop. And I think the number one thing for me when people talk about 3 years, 5 years, is I still want GoldClick to be around. And I like to grow steadily. We've never taken on any investment. We haven't gone too quickly. We've built really solid foundations. And I want to, keep evolving and growing, but at a pace that feels right. We're reviewing how we do our kind of more impactful and pro bono work at the moment. And we've done so much of that over the years. What's next for us in that regard? Those are things that are occupying my mind right now. More partners, more formats, more sports, more impact.
Yeah. Matthew, you should, do one thing, on IPL. IPL is a huge thing for us in India. So, something, storytelling on IPL, would sum it up well.
Cricket is my personal favorite sport. So the fact that we haven't ever done anything in cricket is quite galling for me at the moment. So again, if there are any cricket organizations who would like to do some GoldClick storytelling, let's do it. So ice hockey and cricket, they're the focuses right now.
Yep. Right. You'll definitely get there. And I'm pretty sure, the way you're, just investing your time and, getting all the stories right and, highlighting people, that will actually, take you places and will, connect you with different sports. I'm pretty sure on that.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you for the encouragement.
Anytime, Matthew. So, Matthew, before we, conclude our podcast session, let's take a lighter route. All this while I was, bombarding you with, questions about, sports marketing, sports advisory, football for future, and, about goal click. But this time I'm going to go into your personal favorite, into your likes and interests in the form of a very quick rapid fire. So, are you ready with the first question of the rapid fire round, Matthew?
Yeah, I want everyone to know that I have not seen these questions in advance. So if I and R and stutter, that's why. Go for it. I'm ready.
Yes, absolutely. So nothing, nothing controversial, nothing serious. Just, fun questions coming your way. Perfect. All right. So Matthew, you just told me that, I mean, you have, that liking towards cricket and football. If I have to, start with football, what is your favorite football club?
I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Next question.
No worries. I will never judge you for that. Everyone has their personal favorite. No worries. I'm not going to be, like that. Oh, I'm not going to say that, but perfect then. All right. So when we talk about, cricket, who's your favorite cricketer of all time?
Wow. What a great question that is. What a great question that is. Obviously you want to say an Englishman.
Anyone.
I love Ben Stokes. I loved Andrew Flintoff. I loved Ian Bell. But I also had like a really soft spot for Adam Gilchrist and Shane Warne. Just great. And Jacques Callis, to be able to bowl and bat at that level in both disciplines, that is incredible. So yeah, those are my answers.
Pretty nice combination, and pretty good players for sure. Now you have traveled India and different places during the 2011 World Cup. So when we talk about the desi food, which one did you like the most? When you tried the Indian subcontinent food.
I mean, I've been to India quite a few times now. I love everything in India. Oh God, what do I love? I mean, I just love everything. I tell you what. Oh God, I'm gonna do the pronunciation so badly, but I remember having like some bel puri in Mumbai,
okay.
Which was just like wow. And yeah, like all the food in Goa is like knockout, great. So yeah, I mean, I Indian food is like pretty much my favorite cuisine, maybe after Japanese. I eat well when I'm in India.
Nice. Bhel puri is a very big, famous staple of Bombay, or let's say Mumbai. That's where my mom hails from. So I have that that Mumbai connection as well. That's nice. So when we talk about your comfort food, Matthew, what would that be?
Comfort food.
Yeah.
Oh wow, hummus.
Hummus, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with hummus. But I'm an enormous pizza fan, and I could eat Japanese food all day, every day for the rest of time.
Yep. Pretty nice. That's a good combination again. Now, when we talk about your favorite movie of all time, what would that be?
Wow, good question. My favorite movie of all time. Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, retro movie. Even I like it as well.
Great. Yeah,
nice.
It's my favorite movie of all time, and I will always watch it if it's on.
Pretty nice. So now, what's your favorite holiday destination of all time?
Japan, where I spent a month in 2008. In America, I love Utah. The national parks of Utah are just incredible.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I spend a lot of time in Australia as well. I like Melbourne is probably my favorite city in the world. So yeah, Japan, Melbourne, Utah.
Okay. Nice list. That's good. Now, if you have to, pick out the favorite, your favorite 3 restaurants in London, what would those be?
Wow, my favourite three restaurants in London. Well, Dishoom, obviously. I mean, presumably you've been to Dishoom. It is. I've made massive assumptions. If you've ever been to London, Dishoom is a fantastic Indian restaurant, kind of chain now, but they've got like 4 or 5 premises. The black dal there is just next level. Um, uh, I'm going to shout out my friend's restaurant, Tombo, which is a Japanese poke cafe in South Kensington near all the museums. And um, my local Nepali dumpling restaurant called Momo's. Uh,
Momos. Mhm.
yeah, so if you're in Dalston, Momo's. If you're in South Kensington, Tombo. And if you're in a few different spots in central London, Dishoom.
Okay. Nice. That's a good pick. When I, come to London, probably, that's going to be my pick for sure. Now, if I have to, give you a choice between these two, what would you prefer? Would you prefer tea or would you prefer coffee?
Tea. I've never drunk coffee really in my life. Tea, tea, tea.
I mean, I'm not a much of a coffee drinker, but very rarely, but
I,
not,
I
not,
drink Vietnamese or Spanish coffee with like condensed milk, so it's basically coffee
ah,
for children.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no,
Hmm.
I'd say I'm uh, like 95% tea.
Okay. That's nice. Now, what was the last song, that you have heard in your, Spotify playlist or let's say any playlist for that matter?
Wow. I mean, what am I listening to at the moment? Hold on, I'm just literally going on. What's on my? Uh, I am quite a big country music fan.
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
but I'm also going to shout out a band that an Australian band called Kingswood
Hmm.
that a friend of mine used to be the drummer for. And yeah, I really love almost all of Kingswood's music, but their new album is great. So you should check out Kingswood.
I will check out for sure. Probably, that'll, really give me that Australian vibe. So for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
I
yeah,
will.
exactly.
Nice, nice.
I'll
That's
send you a
amazing.
few songs.
You should definitely send me for sure. Yeah. Now, if I would just like to, ask you this, like, what was your first car, that you have purchased? What would that be? The first car of
I,
yours?
I've never purchased a car. I'm a Londoner. I
Ah.
don't need a car.
Okay.
I drive quite a lot when I'm abroad. I love hiring cars when I go to a new place or new city. But no, I've never owned a car, and I guess I won't until I have children.
Okay. Cool. That's nice. So, I mean, the fine, if you would like to, ask me a question, I'm asking you a lot of questions in the rapid fire round. If you want to ask me a particular question, what would that be?
Um, what part of India haven't I been to that I should go to?
You should actually, visit every part of India. You should, go to the Northeast. Yeah,
I've
that's the
I've
answer.
I've, I've been to Jharkhand,
Yeah.
but I haven't been like far northeast to like Assam. Do you mean like Assam and places or
Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura,
yeah,
Manipur,
yeah.
all of them are beautiful places. And you should, visit the place that I come from, which is called Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So if you come to Hyderabad, you will be really fascinated by, seeing the IT scene, like an IT park, with all
Okay.
those lights and everything. And Andhra Pradesh is, more like, like a cricket playing kind of a place. But if you would like to, visit India, Kerala would be, the place that you should go for sure.
Yeah, I did. I went to Goa for a wedding and spent a week down there, but I didn't get to Kerala.
You
So
should
yeah,
go to
sounds great.
Kerala. Kerala is the next level of it. Yeah.
Right, understood.
Yeah, perfect. So the final question to you in this rapid fire round, Matthew. So Matthew, like, what makes you a proud, let's say Britishman, or let's say, Britisher, a proud.
A proud British man. Um, I think that I'm constantly amazed, like how the sporting culture of our country has. I mean, we all kind of know why, but how it is dispersed throughout the world. And
Mhm.
I just find it very fortunate that like I can go to India and like instantly have conversations about a variety of sports, cricket,
Yep,
football,
100%.
and 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 the English language as well. Like, you know, it's I don't know whether that makes me proud, but it makes my life easier for sure.
It is.
And it makes my life more rich for sure.
Yep.
Because I can connect with so many people because
Yeah.
people kind of understand me a bit more because they you're from London, and like it has such big cultural cachet around the world that it like opens conversations. So I guess like for me, I'm actually probably more of a proud Londoner than I am a proud like
Uh,
British person. Like I think London for me feels like more of my identity.
yep. Yep.
And
Hmm.
so like, where are you from? I would usually say London rather than
Londoner.
the UK. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I'm very proud of my city, and I love the energy of it. And lots of people can't understand the weather here, and sometimes it is a bit grey. But if you, it, it's a very special kind of energy, I would say.
Yep.
As
Hmm.
every city has its own energy, but
That is
yeah,
true.
I'm a proud Londoner, I would say.
That's nice. That's amazing, Matthew. So, Matthew, finally, thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule and being part of my podcast initiative. It was such a lovely conversation today. You took me around what goal click is, and all those beautiful storytelling things. I really was amazed, and I really like the way you're putting your effort and bringing the world together with these amazing stories, bringing different section of people, the fans, the sportsmen, the people who are with the sports itself. So that's really a beautiful approach, and I wish you all the best with respect to your initiative, and it climbs more sports, gets integrated much more, and reaches cricket as well, for a cricket fan like
Yeah.
me.
Well, thank you so
So
much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and yeah, all the best with your next guest. I mean, where do you go from nuclear submarine to football storytelling? Like, who knows what's coming next for you? So
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
interested in that, in what comes next.
It'll be you'll be really happy, and very glad to know who that's going to be, and yeah, it's going to be a good one. I can tell you for
Amazing,
sure.
amazing.
Yeah,
Well, thank
that's
you.
amazing.
And yeah, obviously, anyone who's listening can go and check Gold Click out on our website, on our Instagram, and obviously get in touch if you have any thoughts, ideas, propositions. But yeah, thank you, Akil, for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. So, listeners, on this note, this is your host, Akhil Navluri, signing off. We will be back with another podcast episode with another eminent industry leader of different spaces once again. So, till then, keep listening. Goodbye, stay tuned, and over. Thank you.